Today's video is in partnership with the Brandywine Festival, an upcoming immersive experience where you can spend 5 days living, playing, singing, dancing, and adventuring in the Shire. It's a life countless fans have dreamed of, a life in the rolling hills and humble dwellings of the Hobbit folk. While it certainly seems a peaceful and simple life, it was not without its structure. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we take a tour of the Shire. We begin our look into Hobbit culture by looking at how the Shire is divided. Within the Shire, there are 4 farthings: North, South, East, and West. A notable landmark where the East, West, and South Farthings meet is the 3 Farthing stone. This stone lays at the side of the East Road that goes through the Shire. In 3019, after using the soil from Galadriel in planting many trees, Samwise Gamgee would stand near this stone and cast the remnants of the soil to the winds, allowing it to be spread about the farthings. But we start today's tour of the Shire with the North Farthing, which seems to be somewhat lighter on both history and settlements compared to its neighbors. Being the northernmost area of the Shire, it was the only one which would see regular snowfall, specifically in the North Moors, south of the former Arnorian capital of Annúminas. It is also upon the North Moors where Sam's cousin Halfast allegedly saw a tree man walking the land, leading many to wonder if Ents or Entwives may indeed live in the north of the Shire. Through Halfast, we also learn of an activity that would often take place in the North Farthing, for it is said that his boss, Mr. Boffin, would often send him there to hunt. Within the North Farthing, there is a small woods called Bindbull, though in some publications, it is Bindbale. There are only a few known settlements in the North Farthing. There is the town of Oatbarton. While we don't know for certain, it's possible that its name may derived from oat farming. There is also the settlement of Hardbottle, notable as the home of the Bracegirdle family. The most well-known of this family to readers is Lobelia Sackville Baggins. After the scouring of the Shire and the loss of her son, Lobelia would return to Hardbottle in the North Farthing to live with her remaining family. There is also the town of Longcleave. Among the residents here is a branch of the Took family known as the North Tooks. Another well-known resident of Longcleave is a hobbit named Diamond, who would marry Peregrine Took, and together they would have a son named Faramir. As for the North Tooks, they were descended from the great Bullroar Took, who is responsible for the North Farthing's most memorable moment. In 2747 of the Third Age, or the year 1147 by the Shire reckoning, a group of orcs invades Eriador from Mount Graham. Their invasion of the Shire leads to the activation of the Hobbitry in Arms, a Shire militia led by the Thane, an important leadership position we'll get to shortly. Bandobras Bullroar Took led the hobbits into battle against the orcs. Riding upon his horse, he decapitated the goblin king Gulfinbull with a club. Soaring through the air, the head came to a rest in a rabbit hole 100 yards away. And as legend tells, the game of golf was thus invented. Fortunately for the hobbits, they would experience nearly 3 centuries of peace after this battle, and as a result, the Hobbitry in Arms would only live as a memory of a more dangerous time. Indeed, by the time of the War of the Ring, whatever weapons remained in the Shire were said to be trophies hanging on walls or on display in the Matham House. What is a Matham House? Well, for that answer, we will next travel to the most historic and well-known of the Farthings, the West Farthing. Here we find the town of Mickle Delving, the capital of the entire Shire and home of many important buildings and leadership positions. Among these is the Matham House, which is essentially a museum. Collected and displayed here are a variety of mathams, a Hobbit word for items and trinkets that they didn't have a particular use for. In addition to a display of weapons, it is known that Bilbo Baggins once allowed his mithril shirt to be displayed there. Within this important town, we find the only real official in the Shire, the Mayor of Delving, also known as Mayor of the Shire. This position was elected every 7 years during a festival in late spring known as the Free Fair, which took place on the White Downs in the West Farthing. While there would be a few known mayors like Will Whitfoot, the most famous would be Samwise Gamgee, who would serve for 7 of these 7-year terms. Among the positions it seems the mayor would be in charge of appointing is the postmaster and the first sheriff. The postmaster would, as expected, be in charge of the messenger service in the Shire. Meanwhile, the first sheriff is in charge of the Watch, a group of Hobbit police tasked with maintaining peace in the Shire. In total, there are 12 sheriffs, 3 in each farthing. In addition, they had hobbits known as bounders, who were tasked with policing the borders of the Shire. The number of bounders could fluctuate with the times, though they were known to have more members than the sheriffs. The sheriffs could be easily identified by their caps with feathers. And indeed, it was this very organization which Saruman would later manipulate in his own attempt at policing the Shire's borders. There are many important towns and locations found in the West Farthing. In addition to Delving, we find places like Bywater, home to the Cotton family, Old Noakes, and the Green Dragon Inn. One of the most well-known settlements is Hobbiton, which housed the old mill and many smiles like Bag End. Smiles, of course, being hobbit holes. To the north, we find the small villages of Overhill and Needlehole, between which lies the Rushock Bog. To the west, there lies 2 more small towns, Knawbottle and Little Delving. At the northwest corner of the West Farthing, there is likely the village of Gramwich. While seemingly an outlying minor settlement whose exact location isn't known, we know that this village is renowned for its rope making. It is also the origin of a family line of the same name, as well as the surname Gamage, which would later become Gamgee. Another greatly important area of the West Farthing is Tookland. This wide area is home of the great smiles of the Took family. Tookland is home to this very important family, the settlement of Tuckborough, and the high office of the Thane. This leader, the name of which simply means chief, was established after the fall of Arnor, when the hobbits would be left completely independent from men. Unlike the mayor of Delving, the thaneship would pass through the male line of the family, and while it would become synonymous with the Tooks, it's interesting to note that it originated with the Old Bucks. However, the 12th Thane of the Shire would leave its borders and establish a new realm, changing his name to Brandybuck. Thus, the thaneship passes to a new line, the Tooks. Among the long list of thanes, we find both Peregrine Took and his son, Faramir. And while the thane was typically also the head of the Took clan, in some cases, the matriarch would continue as head of the family after she was widowed. Among the most famous of events to take place in the West Farthing are the setting out from Bag End of the Company of Thorin Oakenshield, Bilbo Baggins's 111th birthday party, and the Battle of Bywater, where the hobbits liberated it from Sharky's, or rather Saruman's, ruffians. But not every farthing is known for great settlements, leadership positions, or battles. Some are simply known for their farming. The first of these is the South Farthing, which becomes synonymous with one of the hobbits' favorite pastimes, pipeweed. The South Farthing is established in 1630 of the Third Age, when many Stoors from Dunlin joined their hobbit kin in the Shire. Because of their previous isolation from other hobbits, it was common for hobbits in this region to have more Stoorish characteristics. those being larger builds and heavy feet, as well as being the only hobbits to regularly have facial hair. Around the year 2670, Tobold Hornblower first grows pipeweed in the South Farthing, and from this would come a vital industry in the Shire. The pipeweed varieties of Longbottom Leaf, Old Toby, and Southern Star would seemingly be much more popular than the Brie variety of South Lynch. Among the villages in the South Farthing are Tobold's home of Mugworth, the smaller Pincup, and Longbottom, the very town where Tobold first grew the tobacco plants, which gives its name to one of the most famous varieties. The fourth and final of the Farthings is the East Farthing, and while it wouldn't be renowned for pipeweed, it does feature a great deal of farmland. There's the land of the Marish, a fertile farmland of reclaimed marshland between the towns of Stock and Rushy. It's in this area where the Maggot family dwells, working on their farm. Another family we know by name is the Puddifoots, who we are told are house dwellers rather than hole dwellers like many hobbits. In fact, most folk in the Marish prefer houses to holes. The town of Stock, north of the Marish, is also home to the Golden Perch, an establishment that Pippin says has the finest beer in the East Farthing. Another pub in the East Farthing is the Floating Log, which is in the village of Frogmorton. In addition to other southern settlements like Willowbottom, Deep Hallow, and Whitfurrows, there's ones to the north that show the East Farthing's varied topography. Here we find Skerry, which is among rocky land and stony hills. Nearby, there's a place called Quarry, likely named for nearby stone quarries, which in the last days of the War of the Ring were used by Sharky's ruffians to store their ill-gotten treasures. Not only would Frodo cross paths with people like Farmer Maggot in the East Farthing, but he would also meet Gildor the Elf near Woody End above Woodhall and be pursued by the Black Riders through these lands. Another fun fact about the hobbits of the East Farthing is that they are said to occasionally wear dwarf-made boots in muddy weather. No doubt these would be acquired from dwarves who would often travel on the East Road, from their settlements in the Blue Mountains all the way to the Misty Mountains and beyond. While each of the four Farthings brings unique settlements, families, and history to the Shire, it's worth talking about the lands outside the Shire as well. For there were many more hobbits who lived outside this area, technically known as the Shire, and indeed they would play a great role in its events and eventually become part of the Shire as well. To the east of the Shire, there is the highly populated area of Buckland. This area, which at least initially isn't part of the Shire, came into existence in 2340. It is established by Gorendad Oldbuck, who crossed the Brandywine River and began building what would become the great ancestral home of Brandy Hall. After establishing this new land, Gorendad changed his last name to Brandybuck, and his descendants would live in his great hall for centuries to come, including famous relatives Meriadoc Brandybuck, and for a time after his parents died, Frodo Baggins. The hobbits of Buckland were ruled by the leader of the Brandybuck family, known as the Master of Buckland. Interestingly, some hobbits outside Buckland chose to align themselves with it rather than the Shire. In the Marish, it is said many farmers acknowledged the authority of the Master of Buckland rather than the Thane of the Shire. It seems to have been tradition for these leaders to have epithets added to their name, as we see throughout their history, with names like Gormadoc Deep Delver, Madoc Proudneck, Marmadoc Masterful, Gorbadoc Broadbelt, Roramac Goldfather, Saradoc Scattergold, and finally our War of the Ring hero, Meriadoc the Magnificent. No doubt the Master of Buckland would serve a similar role to the Thane of the Shire, the role the Oldbucks once had. One of their greatest achievements in the protection of their realm was the construction of the hedge, also known as the High Hay, which is placed on the eastern border of Buckland. The hobbits utilized their skills in growing crops to plant a great barrier that ran for over 20 miles. Along the way, there were a few select gates and entrances available to hobbits. Tradition holds that what prompted the creation of the High Hay was encounters with strange trees of the old forest. While Brandy Hall would be incredibly important and home to the vast Brandybuck family, the capital of Buckland is actually the town of Bucklebury. Near this settlement, there was Bucklebury Ferry, allowing for easy traversal of the Brandywine River to the Marish. The Bucklanders were seen as strange by other hobbits, for they liked boats, and some could even swim, qualities from their Stoorish ancestry. Like the hobbits of the South Farthing, some of the Bucklanders with their Stoorish characteristics could grow facial hair. They were also the only known hobbits to regularly wear boots, not just in certain weather. They are more suspicious of others than the typical hobbit, and they were said to actually lock their doors at night due to their proximity to the old forest. It was also due to their proximity to outside dangers that the Bucklanders created the horn call of Buckland, an alarm that would sound, calling the citizens to rally together to face the threat. There are 3 documented occasions of the horn call being used. First, in the fell winter of 2911, when the Brandywine was frozen and white wolves crossed into their lands. The second was on September 30th, 3018, when Fatty Bolger encountered the Black Riders. Finally, on November 2nd, 3019, Meriadoc Brandybuck uses his horn from Rohan to rally his people to fight the ruffians. Among the notable settlements in Buckland is Crickhollow, where some of the Brandybuck family lived who had grown tired of the crowded Brandy Hall. Notably, it is a home in Crickhollow where Frodo Baggins moves to after selling Bag End, all of which is a pretense for him leaving the Shire in secret. While the final area we cover today definitely is added to the official lands of the Shire, things with Buckland are more uncertain. For Buckland is also known as the East March, and in some early editions, Tolkien had it listed as being added to the Shire along with the West March in the 31st year of the Fourth Age. But before our final Hobbit territory, we'll cover an important feature of the Eastern Shire. Along with Bucklebury Ferry, a way for travelers from Buckland or other places to enter the Shire was the Brandywine Bridge. It's one of the very oldest structures in the Hobbit lands, having been built by the men of Arnor in the glory days of their realm. The earliest hobbits to settle the lands, led by brothers Marcho and Blanco, had an agreement with the kings of Arnor that they would maintain this bridge, as well as the other bridges and roads in the region. Originally called the Bridge of Stonebows, the Brandywine Bridge would come to be the eastern border of the Shire, and the hobbits would often declare distances of places based on how far they were from the east end of this bridge. Marking the border of the Shire, the Brandywine Bridge would be where King Elessar and Queen Arwen meet Mayor Samwise Gamgee, Thane Peregrine Took, and Master of Buckland Meriadoc Brandybuck in the 15th year of the Fourth Age. Aragorn would follow his own decree, not entering the land of the Shire himself, but instead meeting his friends on the eastern border. He would also make the roles of Mayor of Mickledelving, Thane of the Shire, and Master of Buckland official counselors of the North Kingdom. Finally, we will mention the latest of Hobbit lands, the West March. This area would only be granted to the hobbits after the War of the Ring. In the 31st year of the Fourth Age, King Elessar would gift the lands between the Far Downs and the Tower Hills to the hobbits. The one settlement we know of in the West March would be the Undertowers. near the White Towers of Emin Bereid, which were famously built by Gil-galad and housed Elendil's Palantir. The Undertowers are also known for being the eventual home of Samwise Gamgee's daughter Eleanor, along with her husband Fastred, who had previously dwelt in the town of Greenholm in the West March. Their family would come to be known as the Fairbairns, and they would have a hereditary role known as Warden of the West March. This role, created by Thane Peregrine, would have in their keeping the Red Book of West March, the very book that chronicled the adventures of Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, as well as other historical documents. The Library of the Undertowers was said to house one of the greatest collections of historical documents, the other two being Brandy Hall of the Brandybucks and the Great Smiles of the Took family. While it would definitely not be considered part of the Shire, it's worth mentioning that some hobbits also dwelt and worked in the lands in and around Bree. Living in a mannish settlement and frequently being in contact with men and dwarves, these hobbits are more open to things dealing with the outside world than their Shire kin. Most commonly, the hobbits could be found dwelling in the village of Staddle, on the southeastern slopes of Bree Hill. Those who lived in Bree itself had hobbit holes burrowed in the hill above the houses of men. There are two hobbits who were known to work at the Prancing Pony Inn, Bob and Nob. While these different regions would bring their own unique elements to the wide world of the hobbits, there are of course some things that remain consistent with hobbit folk. Hobbits are, of course, well known for their love of food. Indeed, we are told that they would have 6 meals a day when they could get them. These meals being breakfast, second breakfast, elevenses, lunch, tea, and dinner. Now, while the film adaptation adds a 7th meal called supper, in Tolkien's books, there are only 6 hobbit meals, as dinner and supper are terms used interchangeably. As for some of the hobbits' favorite food and drinks, we can look to the wide array of things Bilbo served to the dwarves for the unexpected party. Seed cakes, buttered scones, raspberry jam, apple tart, mince pies, cheese, pork pie, salad, eggs, chicken, pickles, cakes, tea, coffee, ale, and red wine. And of course, we cannot forget that Frodo Baggins in his youth would steal mushrooms from Farmer Maggot. Known for their short stature, hobbits would generally reach heights of around 3.5 feet for males, and rarely over 3 feet tall for females. And while they would often be looked down upon, they would prove their resilience time and again, not only when it came to the ring bearers, but also in days like the Battle of Green Fields, the Long Winter, and the Fell Winter, when they were most threatened. Throughout their lands and their history, they would prove an endearing folk, worthy of the wondrous lands they inhabited. For decades, fans have dreamed of being in the Shire, living the Hobbit life. And now you have a chance to do just that with the Brandywine Festival. The Brandywine Festival is a 5-day, 4-night immersive experience that brings you into the Shire. This officially licensed Middle-earth event is from the folks at Bergschneider, who have over 20 years of experience doing large, live-action role-play events in Europe. In addition to the incredible folks at Bergschneider, they've brought in some great creatives to make things like costumes, props, and sets to feel like Middle-earth. Oh, and yours truly will be helping with quest lines and the story elements, so all the fun can be as true to Tolkien's world as possible. You can get tickets right now exclusively through the Kickstarter, which is already fully funded and currently working towards some very cool stretch goals. And if you've never done live-action roleplay, no worries. There will be pre-event workshops to help you get in Hobbit mode. Join us this October and live out your Hobbit dreams of feasting, festivaling, and adventuring your days in Middle-earth. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC Red Team, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Freya Firestar, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.